welcome again to the Innovate Europe podcast, where we talk to the founders and funders and all of those who shape the European innovation ecosystems. I'm your host, Clark Parsons. I'm the managing director of the Innovate Europe Foundation, and I'm also the CEO of the European Startup Network. And today I'm really excited. I'm joined by a great friend and a great European, Vit Horky, who is the co-founder and chairman of the board at Czech Founders. Vit actually wears a lot of hats, so we'll get into that in our conversation, but that's the main headline title I would put out right now. Vit, you started off as a very young founder with Inspiro Creative and Inspiro, and then went on to found Brand Embassy, which was acquired by NICE, and you joined them as a senior director of digital experience. So you are a serial entrepreneur, but also really a Renaissance man. You've written a book about the transhuman age, and you actively support developing education and democracy. I know you've worked with the Open Society Foundation and also Flying Founders. You've been, most importantly for this conversation, perhaps cultivating the founders ecosystem in your native Czechia and all around Europe. You found the NGO Czech Founders, as well as then Czech Founder Ventures, and you're supporting global impact founders via the Moonshot platform, which is a really amazing platform. You're also the co-founder and general partner at United Founders, a new pan-European venture capital firm and fund, which we'll definitely be getting into. In addition, you're on the advisory board of the European Startup Nations Alliance, and you're also, I'm proud to say this, a member of our IE.F advisory board. So a lot of titles, a lot of great work there, Vit. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Clark. Thank you.
Really great to have you. And meeting a serial entrepreneur from the Czech Republic is something that people might not do every day. So the first question is kind of an obvious one. People probably don't think of Czechia as the hotbed of entrepreneurship. What put you on the path to becoming an entrepreneur? What was the family background, or were you an outlier who said, I want to go into business?
I think that Czechia is actually quite entrepreneurial country, and there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of things, being a self-employed or being entrepreneurs and employers to others. My particular journey is not that unique, I believe. My father, although being a university professor, he was teaching architecture actually. He was also an entrepreneur. So while I was growing up, I saw what it takes to, do some job for a client, what it means to actually, create an invoice, send the invoice, and then see the money coming out of it, coming out to the bank account. So I guess it inspired me actually to become entrepreneurial and seeking always like a business opportunities and trying to kind of like find out what is not working around me and what would be fun to fix it.
Interesting. Walk us through your first couple of companies that you founded and what the spark was to do them.
Yeah, actually, I had a chance to kind of recap my life just recently, actually, for another occasion, and I was trying to find out, what were the very first moments for me when I behaved entrepreneurial. And it was actually when I was already 7 or 8 years old, where I had a brief period where I didn't want to eat meat. It wasn't trendy back then, so I don't know what was the real reason, but I didn't want to eat meat. And I was on a summer camp and they were like serving us a meat every, lunch and dinner. So I started to sell my portion of the meat to my friends around. So I first started to give it to them, but then I realized I can, I guess, make some money out of it. So that was my very first. It was my very first pseudo job, and then I started to do a lot of different things. I was even creating bracelets for my friends and for my schoolmates, and they paid me money for it. So these were the beginnings. And when I was 17, I attended high school here in Czechia. And back then, the big opportunity was actually internet and websites. So I started to create websites. And the very first website that I designed was actually a website that offered professional services of web design for other companies. So I guess I was a bit naive in how easy it can be But luckily enough, I got few clients. And actually, when I got the first contract, I realized I just cannot, hold my promise when I promised them to create, and I had to find people who will do it with me. So I went on the high school to different classes, and I asked people who can make a design, who can program it, who can code it. And that was pretty much the beginning of my sort of entrepreneurial career.
Brilliant. Tell me the story of this first company, and then actually a second one came relatively quickly, both in the digital space.
Yeah, right. So the very first company called Inspiro was a digital advertising agency. So we first started to create websites, as I was saying, to very small companies, even to individuals. And then as we grew on the market, we started to employ more and more people. At peak, we had over 35, 40 people on board. Social media came actually, and back then, around 2008, 2009. Companies just didn't know how to use or whether to use social media anyhow. If they have a role in this whole kind of new thing called Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. So we kind of like jumped on that wave and helped large companies actually to create social media strategies and how to communicate on social media in a meaningful way that customers actually appreciate it. And after 7, 8 years, actually, the company grew quite nicely. We decided to sell it, so we actually sold it quite successfully into independent group of advertising agencies that was sold right after to the Publicis Media Group, the French media group. During that time, I kind of started to also I've launched with a couple of my business partners another company that was distributing software to other companies. So we learned how to sell on scalable basis, how to provide customer service on scalable basis. And that, I guess, kind of proved to be also a platform and knowledge feedback for the third company that we created after, which was called Brand Embassy, and was a technology startup that helped large scale call centers to actually automate their processes. It doesn't sound really fun. I found it fun actually back then because we were talking about like 15 million people every day going to call centers just to pick up phones and and answer to mostly angry customers. There are days that we are the angry customers calling to the customer service hotlines, and we try to kind of help them by a lot of automation, by tools that could help them to provide more meaningful job.
So many of the ventures you founded were in relatively new industries where there was nobody around to teach you how to do this. You had to be an entrepreneur with the chutzpah to say, I'm going to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to learn. What are some of the main learnings you took along the years that you picked up that you then fed into your next venture?
I guess my biggest kind of learning that I got is that the life and and building a business is just failing forward. Like you make fuck ups every single day. Like there are so many mistakes that we're making every single day, small ones and big ones. The big ones we do, occasionally, the small ones we do so many of them every single day. And it's not about saying like I will not do any mistakes anymore. It's about like realizing we're making the mistakes and trying to kind of reflect on how never to make the same mistake again. Always make the new mistakes. And that's the learning that I got actually from people close to me that kind of like taught me that this is actually their mantra, and I kind of, adapted to myself. And it kind of freed me from this notion of that building business is about never making mistakes. I take the opposite way, and I kind of, also try to tell to my team and to my colleagues that, don't be afraid making mistakes. Don't be afraid about talking, about the mistakes you've made. Just make sure that you will try never make the same mistake again.
That's great. That's actually, you know, I don't think you'll find that attitude in most schools or education systems. And consequently, I think most people don't look to the education system as a place to develop entrepreneurship, even though I think a lot of us wish it would. But you, I think, are doing a lot in this area to try and help education play a better role in fostering entrepreneurship. What are some of the things you're trying to do to get the education system in a place where it would foster more entrepreneurship?
I gotta say, like, I'm so energized by what happened last week here in Prague in Czech Republic, because last week we actually ran the very first entrepreneurial education program for high schools here in the Czech Republic that was run by Czech Founders, the NGO that I helped to found years ago, and by a few other NGOs. And I had the opportunity as a mentor to talk to 50 high schoolers. And for them, they've never had an entrepreneur in their families. They've never had somebody who would, show them what being entrepreneurial really mean. For them, last week, it was the very first time that they got on the stage, they got a microphone in their hand, and they actually pitched an idea of a company that they would like to create with their team. And also they told me, and the teachers of theirs actually told me, it was for the very first time in their life, and they were like mostly 16 and 17 years old. It was for the very first time that they have received constructive and positive feedback. And that really struck me. The teachers told me, we take care of them so much, we love them so much, but we have realized that most of the time we're giving them a feedback about the mistakes they have made. And with every mistake they have made, we need to give them a lower grade. So it doesn't teach them the failing forward. It teaches them to hide their mistakes and being a little bit afraid of making mistakes. And that, I believe, is the quite opposite of what it takes to be good in business or being entrepreneurial. So that's what I'm really, really excited about, that we have launched this program. Hopefully we're going to run this program in 15 different schools, 10 to 15 different schools in the upcoming months. And then if this pilot is successful, we're going to roll it out to most of the high schools in the country. And, we'll most probably not see any tangible results in the upcoming 2 to 3 years, but perhaps maybe in 10 to 15 years, we might have much more resilient youth, much more engaged society, quite possibly also more businesses here happening in the country that are created or founded by these people.
That's fantastic. I also see Over Your Shoulder. I think that's the book you wrote in 2018.
Yeah.
Customer Service in the Transhuman Age. So to write a book about transhumanism, I think is really interesting. To write a book tying together the concept of customer service and transhumanism, I think is absolutely unique without making you do a book report. How do these topics go together? And, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah. Well, this book was actually created, it was written by me in 2018. However, I have worked with so many different people on this book, actually, and I benefited so greatly, by discussing the topics about the future of customer service, but mostly also future of AI with so many different people around the world. For me, I always liked writing. So I always kind of seeked the opportunity of how to combine my love for writing with actually doing business. And in my previous company, Brand Embassy, we always were on the thought leadership kind of level when it came to trying to help large businesses out there to understand what is coming to the customer service industry and to the call center industry. So this book was kind of like materialization of all of our thoughts and also research about where do we think that the industry is heading, and how the businesses and how the people can get prepared for it. And what I'm so happy about is that in this book, I'm writing a lot of crazy stuff, crazy stories of how, products like Neuralink, or something that is called today as a Neuralink, and different kind of, brain implants, etc., can actually influence the way how do we work, how AI can influence the way how do we communicate, etc. It was 2019. It was 2018 actually when it was published, and now so much of the crazy shit is already happening. So it's quite scary to see how fast this is happening. And if some of the most craziest things that I've mentioned there in the book will be, will realize in the upcoming 10 years, man, that's going to be big. So
Yeah,
it was
it's
fun to write it.
I mean, 8 years is kind of a lifetime in the development of the AI and tech space. So it's actually amazing that some of the stuff you wrote still is relevant, or because I think every week now we're seeing new products and services that are kind of mind-boggling in the AI space.
Yeah, interestingly, specifically in the call center space, in 2010 to 2020, it was a lot about optimizing processes. And now, 2025, it's all about like fundamentally changing and even like replacing the human agents already by AI. We're talking about like 70 to 80% human work replacement by AI. And we've just recently invested into a company, Israeli company, that is doing this, and it just wouldn't be possible still 5 or 6 years ago. So it's both scary and also incredibly optimistic to see such shift happening in the tech market.
It's amazing. One of the shifts that you've actually had in your personal life has been that you have not been working all of your professional life in your native Czechia. You've lived in the UK as well as the US, but then chose to come back home and build the ecosystem you're building now. How did all of that time away outside your native country shape you? Did you pick up a lot in the US and UK?
I gotta say, like, I'm so grateful that the entrepreneurial career and being a tech founder actually enabled me to live abroad, because me personally, I have benefited so much. First, moving to UK, because I thought that, right after we launched our startup, we actually got most of the customers that were pretty much suitable for our product. We pretty much acquired absolute majority of them in my home market of Czech Republic. So we knew we had to expand. So we took UK as the kind of the most advanced markets in Europe. I I actually moved there, and we started to do a lot of activities there. And it took me like 2 years to get the first customer. So it was incredibly painful, stressful kind of experience. It costed us a lot of money, but not aiming high enough would cost us, I believe, more. And once we actually succeeded in the UK, we actually kind of aimed higher and decided to go to US. So I moved again to California. And again, like, it was incredibly hard. It took us a lot of time to kind of get the first customers, get the first partners, get the first, investors. But at the end of the day, it was a successful journey. It was a failing forward journey, but it was a successful one. And without aiming high enough, I don't think that we would get there. So I'm so grateful for that, and I'm grateful also that I've benefited personally. My wife and then our first child, actually, growing up in California was an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful for that.
I mean, so many founders tend to go to the US and not necessarily come back. So it's actually quite interesting and great that you chose to come back.
For us, it was mostly family reason. We wanted to, make sure that we're close to our family. Most of our family is in Europe, and I'm super grateful for that. But we also missed home. And I gotta say, like, when we were deciding where do we want to go, where do we want to see our kids growing up, kind of like naturally saw that Europe is the place to be, and that also kind of became sort of my mission to kind of make, trying to be on the constructive side of things of making sure that Europe will be the place to be for the next generations to come.
Yeah, that's great. And we're going to get into that. I'd love to drill down first just on your native country, because many people who are listening or watching don't necessarily know Czechia very well. You mentioned the entrepreneurialism. What is it? Okay, we have to get cliche free here, but is there something about the Czech mindset that makes it really special? What for you is the secret sauce of the Czech mentality?
Look, I don't think that we're like totally unique in a way. As it is a case of many countries in Europe, we're a mixture of different cultures, right? We're a mixture, historically speaking, of so many different things. Strictly, uniquely rich Czech Republic is also, there are other countries that are also uniquely rich in their way when it comes to history and culture. What I love about Czechs is, especially in the tech sector, I would say, that they are super hardworking, super knowledgeable, and they just, they're capable of coming up with the great technology innovations, and they're incredibly humble about, what they're doing and what they have achieved. That's what I love about them. What I don't like about us as Czechs is that we're really low on ambitions. When I speak with most of the founders here in the community, and then I travel to US or to Israel or somewhere. In the US or Israel, most of the time you hear the founders to start with a sentence, "I'm gonna change the world by," and then, whatever. And in Czech Republic, most of the time you see people saying, "So I've got this product that we're developing, and this year we would like to, land the first customers in the Czech Republic, and maybe next year we're gonna, expand to Poland or to Germany." And I'm not saying it's bad. And most of the time, these founders are more realistic in their views. The question is, if they not aim high enough, whether they have a credible chance of really get there and create, awesomely ambitious companies. So that's what I don't so much like about Czechs as well. But like, any kind of problems we have as Czechs, you always go, na jedno with the others. And na jedno means you go for a beer, for one beer. But you say specifically you go for one beer, but it pretty much means that, you're going to end up having 3 or 4 beers during the night, but you're going to resolve everything you have with anybody and you'll be fine the next day.
I love that. I need to remember that as the way to solve any impasse in a business or situation. This actually leads into a really good segue, because for the second half of the conversation, I really do want to talk about tech ecosystems, startup ecosystems, and really what you've been focusing your last few years on, which is really being a builder and a shaper of these places, and also around the idea around tech sovereignty. What's the current state of the Czech founder ecosystem? And especially, I think, for those who aren't familiar with it, what could other countries learn from it?
Czechia is a country of 10 million people. We've got roughly 2,000 startups in the ecosystem, over 35 venture capital firms or angel syndicates, mostly early stage, so mostly pre-seed, seed. Some of them are Series A. In terms of funding, kind of depends on the year, but it varies between $250 million to 1.2 billion in euro funding every year. We've got 3 unicorns, mostly B2B startups or scale-ups. Some of them are B2C, e-grocery as well. The founder community, I'm super proud to say that it's quite united, which means that, and I guess like with Czech Founders, we have kind of contributed to it a bit as well, is that the founder kind of community keeps learning from each other. They exchange knowledge, they help each other. And that's what I'm super happy for, because like we're small enough ecosystem to actually, benefit from this kind of founders giving back. There is a lot of accomplished founders who have grown and sold their businesses or have been scaling the business and or giving a bit of their time to actually mentor the future generation of founders or be present on mentoring sessions and stuff. So that's what I'm super happy for. Actually, the tech ecosystem has been employing more people than the agriculture in the Czech Republic. And Czech Republic is, agriculture was always a big thing besides the automotive industry. That's what we're good at. So I was quite astonished to find out that the tech industry and startups actually employ more people than, for example, agriculture. And what's next? I believe like there is a lot of potential coming from Czech Republic. We've got great technical universities, so there is a lot of talent, but we need, I believe, better understanding of our political leadership and more active role in EU in order to kind of shape our future.
That's great. Tell me this. One of the things that I think many of us see in smaller tech ecosystems is the capital problem. I mean, I think there are probably founders everywhere you can find, but it's really difficult in some markets to secure those investments. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for you in the early years. What are the biggest obstacles you see to tech startup investing in Czechia, and how can it be overcome? It feels like it's getting better. You said there's, I think, 35 different funds and angel syndicates. That's a lot more than zero. So, but still, there's a long way to go. What do you see are kind of the main obstacles still on the funding side?
Look, we don't have a capital problem. We have a capital activation problem. So most of the Czech citizens have saved for the end of their lives and for having a comfortable life after they quit working on daily basis. And most of these savings went into either are sitting in the bank accounts are losing money, or they were invested into stuff that are not even covering the inflation. So we have billions and billions and billions of euro kind of locked in different sorts of like a pension funds, and they're not activated. So that's something that I believe needs to change, not only for the sake of us as a citizens, but also for because they can benefit greatly from actually investing not only to tech, obviously, but all over the different kind of capital assets and investment assets. And I've just read recently that 10% of German unicorns are actually owned practically by pension funds from US and Canada, which is great for the pension funds and for the elderly in US and Canada. But we need to kind of grasp this opportunity as well. So that's the capital activation problem. I see that's going to affect not only growth stage, but also early stage startups. And we as a Europe, we just lack growth stage investors, growth money. We don't have a growth investment funds enough in Europe. And we don't have even stock exchange that would be the North Star for many European startups. When a highly ambitious startup founder never says, I would like to float my company on Prague Stock Exchange or Frankfurt Stock Exchange. They either go US or until recently it was London. And that I believe, needs to change as well.
I totally agree with you. And it is funny, even now, I think London is just getting passed by Frankfurt because London really is fading, which is, of course, terrible for Europe. Not only bad for the UK, but terrible for Europe. Let's take one step back because you're, of course, I think, starting to work on a part of the solution financially. But to tell that story, we first need to tell the story of Czech Founders, the organization, because I know you were instrumental in that. Get me from a lot of people who are loosely supportive of each other to Czech Founders gets born and take shape. How did that happen?
In 2019, I was lucky enough to sell my last startup successfully, and that freed me just before COVID to have enough time to dedicate to something else besides my family. And I actually was thinking what to do next, and I felt gratitude for a lot of people actually helped me on my journey of being a tech founder and failing forward. And I kind of felt that this kind of founder giving back notion can be systematized. It can be much bigger. And that's how we founded Czech Founders, which is a non-for-profit organization. It pretty much started as a grassroots organization of uniting all the tech founders in the country. And most of the tech founders in the country are part of Czech Founders these days. And we started to do a lot of different things, from community events and meetups, knowledge sharing events. And nowadays, we also are active in two other things besides the community building and community networking. The second one is public policy advocacy. So we're trying to be a good partner to policymakers on the local level and EU level, and try to kind of understand the potential of the industry and try to also help them to be better at their jobs when it comes to anything relevant to startups, VC, and tech ecosystem. And the third kind of fundament is we're also contributing to the education of entrepreneurialism, and mostly on high schools. as was already mentioned. So this is Czech Founders, over 1,000 people in the community, non-for-profit, run already by small team. I'm no longer executive in the company, sitting on the board and trying to help the company moving forward. And one of the byproducts actually that was created by Czech Founders is a VC, actually a company, venture capital company called Czech Founders Ventures. The reason of founding this company was simple. Every year we conduct a survey among our community members, and we're asking them, what is stopping you to be faster? And what is stopping the ecosystem to be bigger? And one of the results of these surveys were that we lacked in the Czech Republic early stage capital with real added value. And we also realized that on the market, there was a relatively lot of bad behavior when it came to early stage funding by some of the less knowledgeable business angels and also less educated founders. So we try to change that, and we have created a community, actually VC, which means that 45 super accomplished founders who have built and scaled, and many of them have sold their companies, have contributed some of their capital, but also they have committed their time. And they have committed their time to either make better investment decisions for the company, or also to dedicate their time for mentoring and supporting the startup founders. Today, we've got over 30 investments. We're the most active VC fund in the country. And I'm super glad to say that also this notion of founder giving back and LPs as accomplished founders, giving back their time is something that is not only super popular here in the country and most kind of like sought after by the founders, but it also brings results.
Brilliant. One of the things that I think is amazing about Czech Founders is it hasn't really been copied by many others. And consequently, this is what I love. You've had a big idea now, which is, well, if this is working so well in the Czech Republic, why don't we take it to Europe? And so you and a dream team that you're assembling have set your ambitions really high and said, if this has worked so well in the Czech Republic and this model is resonating with founders, with other investors, with startups, let's take it to Europe. So tell the story of United Founders, because that's your next big project. And I think it's really ambitious, but really exciting.
I gotta say, when we started Czech Founders Ventures, besides the NGO, it was relatively comfortable bet because we knew that founders are asking for it. There are accomplished founders who are eager to help. So it was relatively easy to set up the fund, invest, and provide value. Still time needs to, show whether we are doing great job or good job or awesome job. We need a little bit more years to show that. But it was a relatively safe bet. What we are doing in United Founders is slightly uncomfortable for everyone. And I learned to seek for these moments of feeling being outside of the comfort zone. And why I'm so happy about being in the uncomfortable zone is that I believe that Europe is now in a very uncomfortable zone as well. And, United Founders, which is pretty much like Fund 2 following Czech Founders VC, is a continuation of our efforts to bring meaningful support to build European tech champions. And the recent geopolitical situation in Europe, we see it all by ourselves. Like what's been happening on the right with Putin in Ukraine, what's been happening from the left with Trump administration. It is making Europe very uncomfortable. And we need to make sure, I believe, all of us, hopefully, that Europe will be more comfortable in the future. United Founders is one of many, many different attempts by so many different people to be on the constructive side of things. And what we're trying to kind of continue on is to create a pan-European community of accomplished founders who kind of realize that something needs to happen in the European tech ecosystem to say that creating $1 trillion companies in Europe is not unthinkable. that creating the future of AI in Europe that's going to beat US or that's going to beat China is not unthinkable. And creating, defense mechanisms for Europe so we can feel that we're sovereign, again, enough is not uncomfortable idea. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with United Founders, which is pretty much a combination of two things. One is the community of, European tech champions and founders who wants to give back a portion of their time and also a portion of their capital to invest into the next generation of tech champion founders. And it's also a venture capital firm that is pretty much like distributing and investing into companies from medical tech to sustainable tech to deep tech, etc. And I'm so happy for the team we have built, and we count you, Clark, as one of the strategic advisors at United Founders, which I'm so grateful for. We've got a great managing partners, super senior people in Paris, in London, in Munich, Berlin, Prague, Bratislava. We have a support of also a small office in New York for those founders expanding into US. So I think that United Founders is a great partner for super ambitious tech founders that want to build a next tech European champions and are at the very beginning of their journey in their inception or pre-seed stage.
Well, it sounds fantastic. European VC ecosystem, thankfully, is maturing and getting bigger. So even though I think what you're doing is quite unique, I'm sure there are some who are saying, hey, fund number 1,000, what's going to make you guys different? Are you focusing on any certain, I think you said early stage. So I think because of the mentoring aspect for you, early stage, like pre-seed and seed, really is the key. Any other kind of elements of the focus or the thesis that you think are going to make the fund successful?
So currently, one of the things that makes United Founders really, I would say, unique is the operating model of United Founders. Most of the VCs out there, they have a plenty of LPs, and the LPs do not contribute beyond their capital. They're passive, right? In our case, most of the LPs that we have are accomplished founders who have built, awesome unicorn companies in Europe or elsewhere, and that decided not to provide only the capital, but also their time. And, given the fact that they have become investors, they have an intrinsic, motivation to help, which is absolutely great. And, I invite everyone to go to community.unitedfounders.vc and look for the people that we have in the community and that can potentially become your mentors or partners in crime in what you've been building. So that's one of the very key factors of United Founders. And the other thing is that United Founders is not centrally managed fund. We have managing partners who are responsible for the operations in the local countries. And these managing partners have a privileged access to amazing, investment opportunities coming out of Cambridge University or King's College, that hotbed of innovation in medical tech, or a technical university in Munich, which is the hotbed of innovation for deep tech, quantum, also some of the automotive industry kind of startups. So these are some of the things that makes United Founders quite unique, but it doesn't have to be for everyone. It doesn't have to be for every startup founder, and it doesn't have to be even for every investor. So I leave it up to the listeners to decide whether this is something that, is unique enough.
That's great. I think from the interactions I've had with founders, and I've told some about the way United Founders is structured, I have heard a great response, especially from founders, about this element of the mentoring, especially mentoring from people that have been in your shoes, that are usually working in your industry, maybe 5 or 10 years ahead of you. Why is it so crucial in the early stages to get this founder mentoring? Is it just because there's nobody else that knows?
I've actually heard from some of the investors on the market is that, a great founder doesn't need any help. He or she will just find a way. And in some way, I believe it's true, but only from certain stage. And when you have the team, when you have your board of directors, when you have your advisory board already in place, getting smart capital versus getting, a lot of capital and just execute on your strategy doesn't have to be such a big difference. But at the very beginning, when you don't have a team, you're still seeking your late co-founder. You probably don't have, I don't know, great salesperson that can become your late co-founder. You're missing some key technical knowledge in the industry where you want to, become successful. You're raising serious money for the first time in your life, etc. You just need to get a great insight as soon as possible. And most probably, you don't have much time. You have few weeks to crack this topic or to crack that topic before you get to the next stage. And you have another kind of, list of problems that you need to solve quickly. And getting this feedback from somebody who was in the transition, who really understand what it takes and who have solved this kind of problem and can share with you his or her unique insight. It's difficult to get this feedback fast enough. There are so many different mentoring programs, acceleration programs, mentoring groups, etc. But getting the feedback fast enough from the very relevant person, it's tough. So that's why we kind of realized that it cannot end by building up a great community of potential mentors. You need to create a process and motivation for these mentors to be able to help you as soon as possible, as relevantly as possible. And at the same time, you just cannot, call them twice a week and ask them for help, right? So we have created quite a systematic process for making sure that we're able to provide great founder mentors, the right founder at the right time. And that I think it matters. That I think it can create a lot of positive impact and it can actually accelerate the companies at the very beginning. And accelerating early stage companies in Europe is so important because we're like 50% as fast as European startups at early stage. It takes us so much time to raise seed. It takes us so much time to raise Series A. And without proper funding, we just don't stand a chance.
That's great. You mentioned the geopolitics as an aspect of the current situation for the startup ecosystem. I am curious, the phrase tech sovereignty is popping up all over Europe nowadays, and it's even into the tech investing world. Have you been feeling the geopolitical shift among, founders and startup ecosystems? And what does that mean for a fund like the one you're building?
I think it's only logical that we're all concerned, right? Here in Czechia, we're not even 1,000 kilometers from the front line in Ukraine. So we are concerned as a country, as a citizen. And I would be much more concerned, if I sit in Poland or Slovakia right now, I'm being even closer. In the founder community, I think that is a lot of shift in mindset from I will be doing any company that will make me rich and successful into I'll be making company that can positively contribute to, European tech sovereignty. And perhaps the European tech sovereignty sounds more like a political cliche. I think that, from my point of view, there is a growing number of founders who wants to contribute to a better chance that our kids will be still happy in Europe and will now want to leave just because it's unsafe to be here or just because tech innovation is no longer happening in Europe. So I've seen such a big shift in the mindset over the past year or so. Quite surprised by that. In United Founders, we're trying to contribute to this. We're focusing on industries and on themes where we do believe that Europe can be the number one in the world, and that also can secure I would say like a resilient future for Europe. And there is a lot to be done. The good news is that we've got the people, we've got the tools, and we've got the capital. So it's more about activation and orchestration rather than doing some random things to find out what needs to be done.
That's great. Really helpful. I wish you and us luck on getting there. It's going to be a long journey, but as you mentioned, not being far from the front certainly refocuses the mind. And we know of a lot of startup founders who we've both met who have left behind SaaS to go work in defense tech. So there is quite a movement going on across the European ecosystem. Bit of a shift, final question, because you lent me a book recently, which I really enjoyed. And I know it's a topic that is really important to you. You lent me The Ministry for the Future, which is a really great kind of sci-fi fantasy about climate change and its increasingly worsening effects, but also its increasing of the speed in which humans started to react and governments started to react. And so the Ministry of the Future, of course, in the book is the ministry that is kind of in charge of trying to orchestrate a much more fast and powerful reaction to climate change. Do you think startups can be a part of the solution to the changes that are coming in climate change? I know that there's been a lot of green tech and clean tech investing in Europe over the past few years. I know it comes in and out of vogue, but how do you think we can best try to mitigate this besides creating a ministry for the future just like the one in the book?
I'm glad you enjoyed the book, and I love it so much. I think that startups are both part of the solution and part of the problem as well. The recent kind of aggressive uptake of AI usage causes so much CO2 and everything, happening just because of the increase of cloud computing usage, etc. So we're part of the problem as well as part of the solution. So it's important to realize that. And yes, it's difficult, sometimes to invest into technology startups that can contribute to the energy transition or to sustainability, etc., because it's so difficult to see the long term, whether this will be a net positive or net negative impact. So, I choose to be an active in these themes. I choose to be investing into these themes. I don't know whether, I'm making the right choices all the time and every time, but I think it is important that Europe doesn't lose focus on sustainability. And frankly, I believe sustainability is one of the few things where Europe can be the best in the world and can show the others how it's done. Why? Because we have so much to lose if we don't do it, but also we're closest, I believe, in really, showing how sustainable future can really look like. And we've got such a quality of life here is that, when we focus on maintaining the quality of life and leveraging the technology, I believe we can really show China, US, and other parts of the world how sustainability is done in a good way. Ministry of Future was actually a very interesting book. I do really recommend, also for one particular reason. There was a ministry that was dedicated to solve problems that's going to come in future. And these days, most of the ministries that I know are only solving problems that are, that are happening right now. They don't have time and they don't have focus on solving stuff that will be most likely happening in a near or short midterm future. So changing the mind shift in that might be also quite useful.
That's great. We'll wrap things up with a quick lightning round. So thanks so much. This has really been a lot of fun getting to know all the amazing things you're doing. But we always like to end with a quick lightning round of some short questions. And the first one, of course, is one of my favorites, which is if you did have to start over your career outside of technology, what sector do you think you'd be pursuing your career in? And I don't know if it's golf
Yeah,
or...
Clark, I would be definitely a golf player, but because I suck in golf, I would most probably become a caddy.
Okay, I could see you doing some software around golf, but actually, yeah, you're right. I'm supposed to keep you outside of technology. Something maybe a little more fun. What is something you love about Europe? You have lived outside of it, so I know you've had a chance to reflect on it.
I think that Europe is uniquely rich and rich in diversity, culture, nature, history. So rich is something that comes to my mind, and I don't mean money rich. I mean rich in the widest possible aspects of the world.
That's great. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Something that I mentioned already, that life is about failing forward and admitting our own mistakes, sharing it with the others for the benefit of others, and trying never to make the same mistake again is something that that helped me to feel to be more free and also to be more ambitious.
That's really great. I think it's awesome now that you're getting a chance to take this message into the schools because, yeah, they really need to hear that. So fantastic. Final thought here, lightning round. What's a piece of tech that you miss from the 80s or 90s or 2000s? Do you have an old piece of tech that you really wish we
Yeah, I
still
gotta say,
used?
what I would love to learn again is the Alcatel One Touch handheld device. You know, the very one of the very first forms of mobile phones that I used when I was like 17 or 18. I would love to have the modernized, slightly modernized version for my kids because there is no chance how to play, how to watch YouTube or be on a TikTok or playing games on these kind of devices. And they were fun too. They were fun to use it. Actually, it was fun to use them.
Yeah, that would be a fun piece of tech to have back. So Vit, thanks so much. Final question coming up here, but thanks so much for taking the time. If people want to find you online, I think unitedfounders.vc is the best place, or any other places people can find you, of course, on LinkedIn and reach out. So thanks so much for taking the time and being with us. And to end this on a positive note, our conversation, what's something that makes you optimistic about the future of Europe?
I think that Europe is really the best place to live in the world, and the quality of life is unmatched anywhere else. The richness of our lives can be really, can be the best here in Europe, and we just need to be more ambitious about our future and kind of work a little bit more on making sure that Europe will stay that awesome also in the future. And also be more positive about all the great stuff happening here in Europe.
Super. Well, you're a part of the solution, and thanks for that too. So thanks for talking to us. And yeah, good luck with United Founders. Really excited to see what
Thank you
that
so
brings.
much for having me, Clark. Thank you.